Welcome to the Sexy Freedom Media Podcast, a place to discuss pain, passion, and pursuits.
Let's get it. I want to feel alive.
Breathe.
Make some moves.
Protect the throne. This is Sexy Freedom Media Podcast.
Woo! Welcome everybody to the Sexy Freedom Media Podcast. It's your host, Helen Edwards. And today I have my amazing guest. She's actually an amazing friend of mine for many, many years, Sharett Miller.
Hello.
Yeah, so welcome to the podcast, Sharett. I'm going to try to say Sharett. I usually call her Shreddy.
Oh my
So
God.
if I slip up, it's okay. We all
We
know
have
who we're
nicknames.
talking about. So I do want to kick this off, and I think it's going to make for a really good conversation starter. I read this quote, and it was on my tea bag. That sounds so dirty, but actually, if you have a dirty mind, that's probably why it sounds dirty. I got one.
I love it.
So if you ever get the yogi teas, they have little quotes on there, and I love this. Such good quotes. Really makes your day off to a good start. So thank you. Shout out to Yogi Tea. I'm not sponsored by them, but I just love their tea and I love their brand and I love their quotes. And one of the quotes I read, it said, it's not the light, or no, it's the light that shines within the lantern, not the lantern itself. Or, okay, I totally probably butchered that, but it was so good. And it really just made me go, huh, it's the light that shines within the lantern, not the lantern itself. And I was like, and of course, my brain, I thought this is great for us because my brain's like trying to like analyze the whole situation. Like, do I agree with this quote?
Like, philosophically, what does this mean?
What do you think it means, Shreddy? Sharett?
You might as well give it up. Just call me Shreddy the whole time. We made the disclaimer in the beginning. So it's funny because when you said it, it reminded me actually of a really funny meme that I always, it's like one of my favorite memes ever. It's so silly. So it's a picture of a moth looking inside, looking in a mirror, a moth. So already silly. And I think it says like something like, am I searching for the perfect lamp when the perfect lamp is already inside of me, or something like that? Like, because moths, they like go to the light and stuff. So it made me laugh. I was just like, that's so true. This little moth, so much wisdom. But yeah. I mean, we all have light within ourselves, and we shine it to other people. And it's always one of the things I've been saying lately is it's so much more important for you to appreciate and love your own light in order to spread that light to others. Because if you don't love and appreciate your own light, other people can deplete you. They can just like suck all of that energy out of you. And if you don't know where you are from within, you can't replenish it as easily, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think one of the cool things I love hearing about your perspective on it is just your own story of how far you've come. And I don't know how much you want to share, get vulnerable and talk about it. But if you want to, I'll give you that opportunity because I think there's a lot of people out there that you can inspire with your own story. And we do have very similar stories, just different paths of how we took it and when we took it. But I really, knowing you for the amount of time I've known you and seeing your transition, it's just you're one of those beautiful, like, I want to say self-love stories. It's really cool.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Thank you for that beautiful, like, oh, you made me smile. That was really nice what you said. Well, as far as my story goes, there's a lot to it. We'd be here for hours if I tried to tell. Let me try to find the condensed version here. So I had been on psych meds for probably 13 or 14 years. I was diagnosed as type 1 and type 2 bipolar when I was in my early 20s. And they told me I was in the hospital when I was diagnosed, in the psych ward. I was, people will ask me if I was real, up to my family doctor, and they said the same thing. And I'm like, actually, They put me, when I was diagnosed. So they told me that I was going to be on psych meds forever, like that I needed to be on these medications for the rest of my life in order to be able to function properly. And I bought into that. So I was on them for years and years, had both of my children. I was on the psych meds for both of their births throughout the whole pregnancies. And it's strange because I look back at that time, and though it was those were such beautiful moments in my life, my entire life during that period of time was in shades of gray. And it was really difficult to look back on that and see it. But what ended up happening was I started to have health problems from the medications. I was on very, very, very high doses of the 2 psych meds that I was on. And I started to have health problems. Like my liver started to not work as well. My kidney function was low. I had crazy liver enzymes. So they tried to switch the medication, and mentally it made me so much worse. Looking back on that, I'm like, it's because I wasn't supposed to be on it anymore. So I made the decision myself. My doctor, my psychiatrist was very against this decision, but I decided to wean myself off of the medication. That was in May of 2019. I did that. And by June, actually, this is almost a momentous occasion because June 26th, which was yesterday, 2019 was the last day that I took psych meds. Like that's what I call like my anniversary for being off of psych meds. So I'm kind of celebrating that here with you today, Halsey. Like it's such a big deal. I tried to downplay it yesterday, but I was just like, you know what? This is a big deal. I'm not going to downplay it because I went through a lot to get to an even place, to the point where I, felt like I could actually function and felt like I could be a functional part of society. I didn't feel like I was before.
Mhm.
And it's taken probably about 2.5 years to where I actually felt level. So now I'm at this 3-year mark. It's blows me away. I never thought I would be here. I never thought I would be able to come off of those meds and to be able to live my life and to be able to just be. And I describe it now like my life is in Technicolor. It was shades of gray before when I was on the meds, and now I'm off of them, and I've learned to love myself in all aspects. And it's just been amazing. I had a spiritual awakening and all that. I'm sure we'll talk more about that today. And I enjoy my babies, my boys so much more, and just my life in general. My husband's amazing. Like it's just there's so many things that have just started to fall into place.
Mm.
And I couldn't be more grateful. I mean, it's just I'm trying not to tear up talking about it, but
Well,
I'm really
yeah.
grateful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because,
Yeah.
just a little disclaimer, we're not doctors, we're not psychiatrists.
Mm.
We're not telling you to get off your medications if you are on them, because we know that they are much needed for many, many people. So
Mhm.
there's no shame in it.
Absolutely.
The thing is that it was Sharett's personal choice, what I'm hearing, and that you were
Mhm.
ready to take that that journey on. And it's not an easy
Yeah.
journey for people, for you, right? I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'd say in all my years of living, that's definitely the hardest thing, one of the hardest things that I've ever had to endure. You know, I mean, like you were saying, your disclaimer and everything, we're not doctors, and everything. So it's definitely really important for people to understand if you need to be on psych meds, be on the meds, if it needs to be a lifelong thing for certain people, but it's like at this point, I feel like more people need to be a little bit more of a critical thinker and think for themselves, and doctors don't know everything, and you have to listen to your intuition sometimes too, and that's what I had to learn how to do. The doctors were telling me one thing, but my intuition was telling me something completely different, and it's an assessment that is not easy to make at all.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
painstaking,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
I do want to say what's interesting is that fact of every body is very unique. And how you said, use critical thinking, use your consciousness, use your intuition, use all the
Mhm.
tools that you've already been given and instilled inside you to make choices
Yeah.
for yourself, because it's really important. Because I mean, in your case, you were on all these medications and then you decided to get off, and now this whole new door is open for you. And then
Hmm.
it could be exactly the same for somebody, same age, same everything. And then all of a sudden they're like not on medications, but when they do get medicated, and then a whole new door opens for them. So you just never
Yeah.
know. And I think that's where shame needs to like be dropped off and let go of, because
Hmm.
I think shame comes from people comparing each other to each other so much. It's like so detrimental.
It truly is. And I know I went through that for a long time where it was just like, this person's life is so great, like, why isn't my life like that? And it's like, honestly, I mean, we're all so different. We're all on completely different journeys. We all have different perspectives. And it's just that, like, it's all about your perspective. There's people who live in third world countries, that are like as happy can be. Like, they just are so happy in their lives. But here we are in the first world, and there's so many of us that are just miserable. And it's we all have our own situations, and everybody's warranted to feel how they want to feel. But it's so important to not compare yourself to others, because we're all individuals, and each situation is unique, and we have to look at it that way. It'd be lovely to see the whole world just like start to respect other people for being different than them. I feel like that's part of the divisiveness in the world right now, is that people look at someone who's different than them like sideways, and they're like, oh, you don't believe what I believe, so you're wrong. But we should be embracing the fact that we all feel differently and believe differently. Like, how beautiful and amazing is that? Like, if we all thought the same thing, we'd die of boredom. Like, humans would go extinct.
Like the dinosaurs.
Right. Like, oh, they got bored and they all died.
So
Like,
how has spirituality played a role in your I don't know what you want to call it. You can define it yourself, but I would say your healing journey of,
mm,
moving forward from the psych meds.
wow. Oh, there's so much. There's so much.
Give us a few things. Just a few.
Okay.
Not all of
I'm
it.
like, the list is like 20 miles
I
long. Like, okay, let me
know.
think. So I think the biggest thing, and this is something that I definitely say a lot to a lot of people, especially people who I have some people in my life who happen to believe that other people don't change. Someone's in a bad way, or they're a certain way that people aren't capable of changing. So I've heard that a lot, and I think the biggest thing that my spiritual journey has done for me and helping me make the changes I need to change was just having a higher power to look to, having something that, I feel is bigger than me, bigger than everyone, that is kind of governing everything that's going on. So that's where my spiritual journey has taken me. And it just, it makes me feel like I have more of a purpose. And I think that's what I was missing for a lot of years, is I just, like, okay, yeah, I'm a mom and I'm a wife and I'm good at all of those things, but what is my purpose here on this earth? Like, there was just always that burning question. So after coming off of psych meds, and that allowed me to have my spiritual awakening, because I was just numb on the meds for so long, I couldn't feel. So once I was finally able to feel, it was like, whoa, this whole world just opened up. And I think that what that's done for me is
Sorry to cut you off.
it's
Just
made me.
hold on 1 second.
Mhm.
Hold on 1 second. And we're back. Okay, we had a slight issue. Well, Shreddy was diving deep in her spirituality journey. A big, huge spider decided to make its way up to the stands and shout from the spider rooftop that it's gonna get you, bitch. And I was like, oh, not me, not me. It's either you or me. So
She
I had to
said, "Not
pause.
today, little spider."
I had to pause. It was like venomous, and I was like,
Oh
no.
my gosh.
So of course, I grabbed my chocolate off and went to war. And Shreddy saw the whole thing, and
I did. I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, okay, I need a break. I had to stop laughing.
I was like, "What part of spirituality did that play?" And I just like whooped the spider's ass. Like I was like, and
What
this
does this
could probably
represent?
Multi-universe, parallel universe right there. Like,
There you
you
go.
know.
There you go. I was just talking about that yesterday. Parallel universes, and with one of our other good friends, I was talking. Yeah, she was talking about parallel universes and what was it, like dimensions and stuff like that. I love all of that stuff. I was so excited. I was just like, oh, talk to
So
me more.
this is crazy. I don't know who the TikToker is, like right off memory, but there's a
Mhm.
TikToker who specifically does um parallel universes, like videos. So
Wow.
she researches people from like other parts of the country
Yeah.
who haven't lived the exact same life as another
Hmm.
person across the country or something like that. And they're basically everything's the same. They look the same.
That's a
They
trip.
do the same things at the same amount of
Yeah.
time. And the only thing different is they're in different parts of the world. It's the
That's
craziest
a
thing.
trip.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like, because I believe in a little bit
Hmm.
of everything, but that makes me almost believe in it a lot more than a little bit,
Right? That's proof.
right? It's
Like if
proof.
you find like tangible proof, that makes it, a whole lot less, hokey.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess
Yeah.
some people would ask, like, where does that bring it back to spirituality? Like, if you're a spiritual
Hmm.
person, like, why would you believe in that type of thing or something like that?
It's it's funny because there's so many different types of spirituality, and that's what I love about the idea of spirituality, because we all have our own truths, and it's like we all are going to have, like I was talking about, perspectives. That's a big thing for me that I talk about a lot, is because we all have such different perspectives. Our truths are very different, and all of our spirituality can be so completely different. There are no two people on this planet, all the billions of people, that believe the same exact thing, even if they, are in the same religion, let's say. Like, there's so many different ways to think about things and interpret them. And I think that a really big thing is just, well, I don't know, I actually forgot what I was going to say about that exactly, but yeah, perspectives, and actually everybody just being who they are and accepting who they are, and accepting other people even when they don't believe. I think that's what I was talking about before the spider debacle, is just that people, we need to all start embracing each other for being different, as opposed to, fighting each other for being different. It can't, I mean, can you imagine, the world would be so much different and better of a place if we would all be like, oh, hey, we're all different. That's really awesome. Instead of, you know, this divide because of being different.
Yes, I definitely hear what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. I feel like, from my perspective, people want to control other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like there's this, it's a natural, I'm starting to realize it must be a natural thing that we all want some type of control. It's like it's
Hmm.
wired into us. And
I think
I
so.
wouldn't say, maybe the word is not so much control, but um organized or
Hmm.
analyzed, or it's a different terminology, but it's almost meaning the same thing. We want to know what's going on around us because that's a part of our
Right.
security, right? And
Hmm.
I'm always wondering, like, why are people so judgy towards each other? And I think it's because there's a lot of self-judgment, and
For sure.
it's so huge in the religious and spiritual world. I've been thinking about this a lot just because my journey has taken me on so many zigzags into so many different arenas. That
Mm-hmm.
an example of that is before I got into yoga, I was, into spirituality and religion my whole entire life. But I remember I was like, yoga, that's the place of non-judgment. And everybody's
Hmm.
so, and,
You're so
just, it's
zen.
amazing. Yeah, I want to get into that. And I was like, that's where I want to be. And then I ended up getting into it. And it was, anything brand new is always like, you don't see the
Hmm.
red flags. And in a meaning red flags, no disrespect to yoga, but it not yoga itself, but the yoga community, uh,
Hmm.
they're humans. And wherever humans are at, there's going to be judgment. There's going to be harshness. There's going to be comparison. There's going to be, jokers. And it's because that you can't take like a human and then put it in another box and think it's still not human. Like do you know
Right.
what I'm talking about?
I do. I
Mhm.
do. I think a big part of that and the reason why people do it, like you said, they're judging themselves. And so there's a huge component of projection that is like, like I might feel a certain way about myself, like inwardly, subconsciously, and not really realize it, but there's another person, and mirroring. That was the other thing too, projection and mirroring. So you come across somebody else who reminds you of that thing within yourself that you don't like, that you haven't necessarily faced, that's a issue for you. So then you look at the other person and you're like, oh, this person is like really terrible because, whatever. I don't like that person. And you're like judging the person based on how you feel about yourself in a way that you don't realize you feel about yourself. And they make you see that part of yourself that you're not ready to see yet, So it's just like, it's this whole big circle of, you know, seeing yourself in others and projecting and people not wanting to look in the mirror. I think that's a big part of it too. It's not easy. It isn't easy to look at your own flaws and be like, oh, this is something that I want to be better about, because it's hard to admit that. And I think that's a big thing for people. It's easier to point a finger at somebody else and say, well, you're bad because of this, this, and this, instead of looking in the mirror and saying, okay, what do I need to fix about myself? What can I face that I can
Yeah.
make better about myself? For
Oh
some
yeah.
reason, that is the hardest thing ever for us humans.
Right. Yeah. And it's weird because it's a weird world. Every
Hmm.
day, you're not just dealing with the outside world. You start dealing first thing, it's almost like your first introduction to life every single day is the life within you. And then
Hmm.
you've got, it's like an invisible wall. Okay. You've got to deal with yourself first. Like, for example, this morning, I had a major headache. And the first thing I think of is, did I drink last night? Because I was such a drinker and I haven't drank in like, almost a month. And I don't plan on drinking through my surgery or the recovery. So I'm like, Helen, you haven't drank. So it's like I'm talking to myself and I'm like, oh, but this headache, like I don't even want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And it's like, there it is. There's the initial introduction to my world and the wall I've got to get past so that way I can enter the external world, get out,
Yeah.
go swimming with the other humans in the world.
Right.
It's so interesting. But even when it's not a wall, like let's just say somebody jumps up and they're like, oh my God, yes, I'm going to the gym or I'm going to hike or I'm going to do something fantastic with my
Hmm.
kids, you're still getting up to the introduction of your world. And that world is saying, I feel good.
Yes.
It's you are first acknowledging yourself. And this is why I'm a big believer of affirmations, because you're that I am, that validation to who you are when you first begin your dream life, your real life, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
That's where it begins. That's the beginning of the
Yeah.
story you're about to write that day.
Yeah. And it's a choice. I think that's a big thing, a big hindrance for a lot of people is, many people are on autopilot and they get up and like the quintessential example, like you get out of bed and you stub your toe, and then like the whole rest of your day is shitty because you stubbed your fucking toe, and it's like you have a choice. And it took a long time for me anyway. Maybe it would take long for some people, but it took a long time for me to realize that when things like that happen, I can stop and make a decision. Like, is this what I want my day to be? You know, pain from stubbing my toe. Do I want that to like go into the whole rest of my day? Or do I want to choose better for myself and make my day awesome, regardless of a sore toe? So I think that's actually it's a practice, it's just like you have to dedicate yourself to yourself. Because when you wake up, it's that choice. Like,
Hmm.
okay, do I want to make this a good day, or do I want to let whatever bad forces, I feel around me take over me and just go into autopilot? And I think
Ooh.
that's been the biggest part of my journey, honestly, Because I used to wake up, like, especially after coming off the psych meds, because it was like, there was withdrawals, and it was like physical withdrawals. There was also mood withdrawals. So I'd wake up angry, literally like ready to kill someone, angry every single day. That was part of the withdrawals I went through. And I had to work through that, like day after day after day. I'd have to wake up and like make myself actually get out of that, or else I go through my whole day like yelling at my kids, or, like pissy at my husband. And it's not fair. It's not fair to me, for starters, and it's not fair to them. So
Wow.
that's the big thing, just the choice.
I think that what you said, like day by day by day, and
Hmm.
it goes back to what all the research says. If you train yourself every day, you will develop new skills. The brain is such a cool, like, alien in our heads. It's so interesting because we don't know everything about it yet. The things
Right.
we do know, and the things that's just like, okay, this is actually common sense now, is that
Hmm.
if you train yourself a certain way, I think there's a 21 days, or I know the
Hmm.
21 days is a big one. If you train yourself
Right.
for 21 days in new habit, no, it becomes a new habit, right?
Hmm.
Am I saying that
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I've heard that one a lot. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's the
Yeah.
gist of it. Yeah, that was something I learned. Oh shoot, that was something that I learned in therapy, when I was in therapy, like a long time ago. Um, I think I probably did 8 years, eight, 8 or 9 years. I had a therapist, and I'm a huge advocate for that. Let me just say, like, especially right now, like with everything our world's gone through, like people need therapy. It's just like that should be mandatory for everybody for like a year. That's my opinion. But one of the big things I learned in therapy was, making habits and retraining your brain. And it's I do want to address there's a stigma with therapy, that, like a head shrink, that they make you sit on a couch and they like make you rehash all of the horrible things that you've been through, and then like put things in your head. And it's like, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that I mean, maybe old school, actually, old school, they used to do that before, you or me were born. But a lot of things have changed within psychology, and I'm not a psychologist, so go ahead and put that disclaimer out there. So I don't know. I'm not an expert on the subject. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. But I think the biggest thing, just like everything else, and something that I will keep saying over and over and over, is everybody needs to use their own critical thinking skills when it comes to even going to see a therapist. You know, your critical thinking skills, number one, and number two, your intuition. Just because if a therapist says something to you that sounds crazy to you, that's not resonating with you. It's not resonating with your heart. So you have to think to yourself, huh, well, maybe this isn't for me, or maybe I need a new therapist, or, maybe I need to try something else. And it's just like working through all of those things to try to build yourself up and build those new habits, and, retrain your brain. So it's not just you go and rely on somebody else, the therapist, to help you get through it. You have to do the work. You have to be willing to assess what's going to work best for you, and, what's not, like push to the side what's not for you. And I think that's also another big thing that I see with a lot of people that I'm around. It's just like with our society right now, people just want to look at what the news says or what's on social media, and like, oh yeah, that's it, that's the thing, instead of using their own mind to decide, well, is this the thing for me, or is this just, is this something I need to put to the side? So it's a big part
Yeah,
of it.
definitely. I love that you brought up therapy. I think I'm 100% on
Mm-hmm.
board with talk to a therapist, talk
Mm-hmm.
to now, if some people are like, oh, I can't afford therapists. Well, there are life coaches, there are spiritual coaches, and I know they call themselves
Mm-hmm.
a coach, but coach actually means that they've done the work, the
Yeah.
studies, the research to get that title, because that's exactly what therapists have done too. Well, I wouldn't
Right.
say it's exactly, like, there's obviously some differences in academics.
Mm-hmm.
However, I know life coaches, and I know spiritual coaches who actually have the academics behind them. They once were therapists. But
Mm-hmm.
because when you're a therapist with academics, I don't want to talk out of my ass right now, but what I was told by many of them was that there's certain rules and regulations that they couldn't do under the academic part of therapy or working
Right. With
for
the
an
license.
right with a license. Yes. So
Yeah.
that's why they switched over to life coaching, spiritual
Hmm.
coaching, and all the other terminologies, and just
That's
basically
interesting.
started their own thing because they wanted to help beyond the borders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that
not
makes sense.
all of them, but I when I learned that, I was like, I had no idea. And that really like made me realize, you know, the kind of people I want to work with. I want to work with somebody
Mm-hmm.
who has something to tell me and they're able to go beyond that, not because they can't keep it in because they're following rules and regulations. Tell me something that
Right.
can help me. Don't hold back, you know?
Right.
So, and nothing against if you're out there and you're a therapist and you work and you're like, that's not true. Hey, I'm going off what I was told. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just some scenarios, and it could be completely different. If you have a therapist
Mm-hmm.
who's in academics or a license or works, they're amazing for you, keep going to them. I'm just saying
Right.
there's a different variety out there of different people that can help you. So I am an advocate, and I definitely encourage, like you Shreddy, see somebody, because here's the number one key about the whole purpose of it: support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Support, right?
Yeah. And I think that a an important part of it is to have a non-biased third party, in certain situations that can be helpful because you talk to, your friends and your family and stuff, like they're not, it's not on purpose and it's not malicious, but there's always judgments, like certain types of judgments that'll come from your friends and from your family. And sometimes it's, a good judgment, that might be enabling you in a way that's something that you need to get away from. Or sometimes it is a bad judgment, and something that's detrimental to your mental health. But having someone who has either the training, like the academics, like you were talking about, or the experience, because I know there's plenty of life coaches out there who don't have the academic training, but they have life experience and have been through so many things and, seen a lot and helped a lot of people. And that experience to me is like just as important as the academics. But it's like it's so important for you to have someone who has some sort of experience and that's outside of you and outside of your world, you know, if you need to have a separate perspective, but there again, I keep preaching all the time, people have to think for themselves. And that's the biggest thing. Like someone could say, like what you said about the um people who were licensed therapists and then became life coaches because there was some restrictions on them, and someone might say, oh, that's not right or whatever. But each situation is completely different. Maybe somebody wanted to use tuning forks, and they don't allow that in like a licensed therapy practice. Or it could be any number of things that are just not allowed, or not a best practice, or not something that's done on a normal basis within licensed therapy that you can do as a life coach.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, if it's all one of the things that I've kind of always been like really weirded out by is the
mhm.
amount of people that want to help people until they're like, until their rough side comes out. And it's like,
Oh no.
I'm so confused on that, like very contradicting
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
or verbiage. And I'm still weirded out by it when it's really intense, but I can't say that I'm like innocent because I've done it myself. So when I realize I've done it, I'm like, ooh, should I even say anything about it now? I'm one of them, and one of them is pretty much all of us. So
Yep.
yeah. And but then I think I hold people to if you're somebody out there who's a leader, I'm big on this
Mhm.
too. If you're a leader, I hold you to major high standards.
Yeah.
And especially if you're a spiritual anything, if you're a life coach, if you're a women empowerment, especially if you're a yoga teacher,
Mhm.
instructor, I hold you to high standards. And I think that's where my personal. And I'm just going to admit it. I can get very judgmental because,
Mhm.
and I don't go in and guns blazing, like I'm going to pick you
Mm-mm.
apart and see what you're doing wrong. I don't think like that at all. What happens is if there's like this energy conflict between me and a person, and I'm like, and then I'll start, running down the checklist. Maybe it's their hormones. Maybe they got in a fight before they came here. Maybe they're having a rough day and stub their toe, because I'm
Yeah.
giving them the benefit of the doubt of
Yeah.
everything because, because I do know as myself, as a leader, I think I am, I have those days too. But then it goes back full circle to that control thing.
Oh
Like,
my
am I
gosh.
am I about to judge them
Yeah.
because they're not being the way they should, but then I'm like so guilty of it myself,
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And yeah, going back to control, you were talking about that. I think that was a big thing for me. It is for everybody. It's just one of those like human tendency kind of things. Um, but yeah, you want to know what's happening in your life. You want to know what's happening in your surroundings and be able to keep yourself safe. I think that's essentially what it boils down to. And it's like, I think that's where my spiritual awakening gave me a really, really interesting shift in perspective.
Mm.
Is so with many spiritual people, you'll hear us talk about surrender, and I had a really big resentment against that word for a really long time because I'm like, the fuck does that mean, surrender? Like, surrender to what? Like, who am I surrendering to? Like, who's gonna take care of all this stuff if I surrender? You know? Like,
Girl,
how
preach.
does this work? But I realized that, like, it's the rabbit hole is so deep. We talk about the rabbit hole a lot, honey. It's there's so many components, to our lives. And one part is, if you find, well, I'll say this. This is what I believe. Your inner world creates your outer world, and that can go, I mean, you can go into law of attraction and all sorts of things based on that. So it's like if you find peace within yourself and your inner world, your outer world has no choice but to be peaceful. And it's a vibrational frequency thing. And if inside your vibrational frequency is high and you're soaring, everything and everyone and everybody around you is gonna rise to that where you are. And anybody who's not supposed to be where you are at the moment, they might fall off. You might not hear from them for a long time. And that, I think, is one of the hardest things to relinquish control, because you can't control who's not going to be with you, if you are vibing all high and they're not ready to, but that doesn't mean that they won't come back to you. So that was one of the biggest things for me to come to terms with was, okay, so surrender. I surrender within myself and look to, all of the positive things, all these tools, the spiritual tools I put in my spiritual toolbox now. And it was crazy because once I finally was able to do that, so many things started falling into place. I had people coming into my life that I hadn't talked to in a long time that, maybe weren't doing well a long time ago, but they're doing awesome now and they wanted to share it with me and I hadn't heard from them for years. And on the flip side, I had some heartbreaks. I had some people that, I really thought were going to be in my life for a long time just kind of completely go away. And honestly, a couple of them have come back, like they've gone through their things that they need to go through and we've like come back together. And
Yeah.
so that control thing is just like, I feel so much more at ease not trying to control everything in my life
Girl.
anymore.
Well, I applaud you. One, because I've seen the transition. I don't even know how many years we've known each other. We've known of each other for
At least
almost
15,
18 years.
18.
Almost,
Yeah,
yeah, almost
that
18
sounds
years.
about right.
But
Yep.
known you, like got to know you, got to hang out with you. Gosh,
Maybe 10
maybe,
years,
yeah, 10 years.
maybe 10.
So
Yeah.
we are in the same we're in the same girl gang, I want to say. And what you were talking about was exactly right. The group of women that we've kind of grown up with. 10 years, you grow up with these women, you grow up with these
Yeah,
people, some
absolutely.
men too. And we just
Hmm.
basically, we've seen people fall off, we've seen people jump back on. You hit it on
Yep.
the head. I really like um the way you described that whole situation, because you're right. That is still is one of the hardest things for me, is to surrender and let go,
Hmm.
of people that I know are just like I'm not hearing a lot from, especially since I moved
Hmm.
here to Wyoming. And my struggles, just I was so involved in my friendships. My friendships were
Yeah.
family to me. They are family to me.
Hmm. Yep.
But when you are out of sight, out of mind, people kind of tend to go on with their lives, and you realize that your life is now in a whole different chapter, and their life is still it's in their chapter. And I've had
Yeah.
to let go of the judgment of, oh, are they even my friend? Are they, do they
Yeah.
even care anymore? Like, I've been there for them. Like, I had to really let go of those ideas. And that
Yeah.
a lot of that came, and this, it came from during the time I was going through with my mom, and while she was dying. And I just remember realizing my mom was a huge, like, God, she was amazing, and she's still amazing in heaven or wherever she's
Yes.
at.
Oh my
She
gosh.
would
Yes.
she would tell me, why are you upset? And, oh, I'm not hearing from this person. She goes, what? Why? And I was like, well, because this, that. And then she dig deep, like she was always following up. Well, why do you feel like that? Like, why? And I was like, I don't.
Yeah.
And it came to nothingness. Like, there's really no point. Like,
Yeah.
why am I
Yeah.
mad? And
Right.
and she's like, they got their lives, and you know, their life doesn't revolve around you. Like,
Yes. I say that a lot
and
to
she goes,
myself.
yeah, and she would say, who's here holding my hand? And I'd say, me. You are. She goes, do you see any of my friends here holding my hand? I said, no. She goes,
Mm,
look, when you pass, when you're going through the same situation, she goes, it's probably going to be somebody who's like either your husband if you're married, or your boyfriend, or your
yeah.
kid.
Want to hear more?
Visit us at sexyfreedommedia.com.
She goes, they are your family, but they're like, they're next to the family. She goes, don't be
Right.
mad at them. She goes, you want to be mad at someone, be mad at your sister. I was like, good point. She goes,
That is so
she goes,
funny.
don't do that to them. She goes, love them right where they're at. And it just
Oh,
put so many things in my perspective. Like, yeah, you're right. I,
yes.
and it goes, boom, back to what we were talking about. The choice of every day. The choice every day is who
Yeah.
you're going to love, who you want around you, who you're going to be,
Hmm.
what music you're going to play that day for
Right.
that moment. That's important.
That's a big one for us. Heck yeah.
Yeah, right?
Man, one of the things that you said, it made me think of one of the themes, I guess you could say, a big theme in my life lately is, you said that your mom would say you have to, realize where that person is in their life and let them be there. And that's like a point of acceptance.
Mm,
And acceptance has been one of the biggest themes for me. And as far as friends go, and even family too, I mean, any type of relationship with any person in your life, a friendship or, like family or a relationship, a romantic relationship, like it's all work. It really does take work. And part of that, I feel like that I know I had a hard time with and still do sometimes, is accepting where a particular person is in their life and letting them be there, like without me judging it, like to some extent, like humans, we're judgmental, we just are. But not in a sense of like, well, they should be doing better than they're doing right now, like
mm,
that type of judgment. That's what I tried not to do to people, because there's nothing I can do to change where somebody is. I can only change where I am, and they're going to go back to the vibrational frequency thing. Like, I'm going to continue to raise my vibrational frequency constantly all the time. Whoever wants to come up there with me and hang out is welcome to, but anybody who can't get up there right now, I accept where they are. That's what I'm working on anyway.
mhm.
Accepting where they are and just sending light and love from afar, or just energetically reaching out to that person when I can't talk to them, on the phone or just like in person or whatever. If there's just a misfire or missed connection, and
Yeah.
that's a common thing. It really is, but just to accept, and I have to accept
Misconnection
where I
is
am too.
absolutely. And I just want to say
Yeah.
something, and because
Mhm.
we both have talked about this before, when it
Mhm.
comes to friends, is that when you were saying, you're growing up on the ladder, you're growing up in frequency, and
Mhm.
some of them aren't at that place where you're going. Sometimes
Right.
there's judgment because they're judging you from where they're at and where they know you at. And
Mhm.
that's where people think that you're at, but really you've gone way past that. But because they can't judge
Right.
you where you're at now, it's because they're not there. They're
Yeah.
seeing through their eyes of where they're at. And that's something I've had to realize, like, you know a lot of, and a few friends, and you know who they are, and I love them to death, but when I do see them, they judge me from where they think I'm at still, because that's where they're
Right.
at. And
Yep.
I used to get really upset about it, and I used to think, maybe I should cut this person out of my life. I really thought like that because I was angry, that they couldn't
Yeah.
see me where I am now. But then, as I've grown, as I've evolved in my my own journey,
Mhm.
and what we're talking about, acceptance, me allowing to accept them where they're at and where they see me at, is like, oh, it's brought more compassion to me for them,
Yeah.
because I love them and I'll never stop loving them unless they were absolutely toxic to my life. Then I would,
Right.
that's reason to cut somebody out. Okay.
Yes.
But if somebody's just trying to grow and they're growing a little bit slower than you, there's a level of compassion for that person I believe we should have as
Mhm.
friends who say, we love you and we support you, and you're going to join me and we're going to join each other and we're going to cheers
Yep.
about it. It's just, we're not all at the same pace.
Yes. Yeah. That is so true. It is really. I mean, I just I see it all the time, just with everybody, and like I said, even family. I think that's been probably one of the biggest issues I've had, is just trying to accept where my family is. I've come to terms with a lot with friends. I have, just because over the past few years, I've met new friends, I've lost new friends, I've lost old friends. There's been so much that's happened. And it's been, it was painful, some of it, but I learned so much. I learned so much about myself, and there was just some things that I looked at the situation, and instead of getting mad at that person, I'm like, you know what? What could I have done differently in that situation? Like, what can I learn from what happened? And it doesn't always mean you have to come back together with that person, because most of the time it hasn't been what's happened, especially when I've lost like new friends. But as far as family goes, like, they're always there, and like, you can get mad at them, or you can, like, things can fall off or whatever, and they're not going anywhere. And it's just how it is, and it's good, and even when I don't talk to my family members for a long time, it's that when we come back together, it's still, maybe they said some shit about me behind my back, which I don't even fucking care anymore. I'm like, say what you need to. I know where I am. That was also a big thing for me too, is to stop judging myself based on other people's points of view. That was huge. So I don't give a fuck what anybody says about me at this point. I am where I am. I am who I am, and if you don't like it, then that just means you have some work on yourself to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll come together when you're ready to, have some love and acceptance for yourself, for one, because I know that back to projecting, all the projecting that people do,
Mm-hmm.
and the judgment and stuff. And yeah, once people can learn how to look in the mirror, we have a lot of like rolling themes we're talking about here
Yeah,
today.
no, that's so true though. What you were saying, like, family's just always there. It just is. It is
They're
so true. You can have somebody in your family who's a complete asshole and they actually are
Mhm.
toxic, and they're
You can't get rid of
family. Like, you can't really get rid of it. You can't be like, no, I don't know them,
them.
because they're like, you know me, bitch. Like,
Yeah, right.
you're like, dang. all right, that's my sister, that's my cousin, whatever, you know?
Right.
So
Yep.
yeah, no, I totally get that. But it's I think to myself, like, one, and you didn't get to pick, you didn't get to choose your family, but you do get to
Nope.
choose your friends. So that's a
Right.
level of empowerment right there. Like,
Yeah.
choose your friends and choose to accept them and love them because you have taken on that role as you're my friend. If you don't want to do that, just don't do it, but do
Right.
it decide it early, because when you start growing
Yes.
with them, I've realized, now in my 40s, I don't, you do get new friends. You do. And I love all my
Mhm.
new friends. They're amazing. And I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure we're going to have lifelong friendships because I'm that type
Yeah.
of person. And I think
Hmm.
you are as well, Shreddy. We're deep with people. We're vulnerable. When you're deep and
Yeah.
vulnerable, you make really good connections and strong ones.
Yep.
Um,
It's a Virgo thing too.
yeah. But the women in our girl gang, like, I really try to water my seeds, my relationship as much as
Yeah.
possible that I can
Yeah.
without depleting myself. Because
Hmm.
in the end, like I said, my mom said, well, who's here holding your hand? I am. But
Yep.
the love and support that surrounded my mother in her end days was her girl gang. I mean, they're the ones who threw the party for them. Shout out to Women in the Wind. They threw
Yeah.
her the party. They, would invite her to parties, even though they knew she couldn't come. They were like, come. And she ended up making it to two of them, or one of them, I believe. But still, it's like
Oh, they included her.
they included her. And it's like,
Yeah.
when you're older, I want to have that. I want to be like, okay, kids are grown, you know, my man's doing something else. Like, let's go on
Right.
a girls' trip. I want to continue having girls' trips for the rest of my life because it is so empowering to the female soul,
Yeah.
to the women divine, the goddess, the goddess
Yes.
in each of us. I feel so thankful to have those women in my life.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree. And it's we I know, like, with our group, like, we're also uplifting of each other. And it's like I know people who have a little mini story to tell about something I went through. But I was gonna say I know people who are not empowering, and like they sit around and like talk shit, like behind people's backs, and I'm just like I just don't understand that. And so there are some people like that who I'm loosely associated with, and I'm like, okay, I'm not seeing where all of that is coming from, but when I'm around those people and when they're around me, I'm my authentic self. And like I said, if people talk shit, they got something to say, that's on them. It doesn't affect me any. If they have something to say about me that's negative. But one thing that was like that happened to me recently that tripped me out. It's like a human tendency. I'm like, what is the word? I don't know. I guess it's just like a human tendency, like a human psyche thing. I was around some people who tend to have a little bit of drama in their lives. And just we really had a good time and really connected and stuff when I hung out. And I started to notice that I was starting to like create some
Mm.
drama in my life that wasn't really there. And I was just like, what the fuck? I'm like, nothing is wrong, but I'm like finding things to create that are wrong. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. And it's funny because one of the cool things too since my awakening is I have like this awareness where I can see when I'm doing something that's kind of illogical and just is makes no sense and is just weird. I can kind of pull myself away from the situation and be like, okay, this is not normal. This is not where you should be. Whereas before I'd be so wrapped up in it, I wouldn't be able to see that I was, not making sense.
Mm.
So essentially, what it boiled down to was for some reason, I was on my little molehill and I was making it into a mountain. This is my little analogy. And these other people, they're on mountains of shit, you know,
Yeah.
sticky, smelly shit. And I was trying to like make a mountain out of my molehill, a mountain of shit out of my molehill. And I'm like, for what? I'm trying to connect more closely with these people, but it's like, their vibrational frequency, you know, it's a little bit on the lower level. So it's like if I want to connect with them, I can't take my vibrational frequency from here down to here to meet them. That doesn't work. It
Mm-hmm.
just makes me feel like shit and it doesn't help anybody. And for some reason, that is what I was trying to do. It took me about a day to figure out that I was doing this. And I'm like, okay, I had to think, look at my molehill that I'm on. Like, it's not even that bad. Like, there's some grass on it and it smells nice. It doesn't smell like shit. Like, they have their shit mountains. I don't want any parts of that, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So it was just weird that that was like what my mind did automatically to connect with these other people that weren't doing that well.
Mm.
And I had to catch it. I had to
Ooh.
catch it. I started to create drama in my life that didn't exist.
That reminds me of trauma bonding, the term trauma
Yes.
bonding, where
Yep.
you still have like uh, some un, what's the word, Shreddy? You're good at this.
I don't know, some untended to wounds, you know, or
Yes,
things that still need healing. Yeah.
right. That's kind of how
Yeah.
it's, goes back to like attracts like. And even though you can
Mhm.
be as positive and amazing as and healthy as you want, we all still have that little child within us who's went through some, through our own shit. And
Yep.
that subconsciously can attract as well. And
Yeah.
I think lately, with my surgery coming up, I've been kind of telling a few people like, oh, these are my fears and these are this. And I want people to understand there's a fine line when and I'm saying this because I wanted this. So I realize
Yeah.
you've got to kind of tell people, especially when you have people in your life who are big, big believers of law of attraction and
Mhm.
manifestation, that sometimes you need somebody to just listen to you and support you right where you're at. Because when I was telling people about it, some people were like, are you attracting, you're going to attract the surgery to go wrong, you're going to attract, you might,
Yeah.
are you attracting all this fear? And I was like, that can be a little bit upsetting because it's like, no, I'm not trying to attract anything. I'm telling you, these are my human emotions. Like, I am scared.
Mhm.
I'm feeling afraid. Like, this is
Yeah.
okay for me to express this. It shouldn't be like shut down with, well, you can attract it bad in your life. You're going to no. And that's where I think that, for me, when I started realizing that that's the way I was feeling, I realized for
Mhm.
myself, I need to pull back a second and say, if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through, start actively listening, start, trying to understand where they're coming from instead of
Mhm.
jumping on with the whole think positive, be positive, don't attract it in your life,
Yeah.
because and I was relaying this to my boyfriend the other day, is I do believe in law of attraction. I do believe in
Mhm.
manifestation. However, I know that kids suffer when they shouldn't have to. They're
Mhm.
not attracted in their life. They're innocent,
Mhm.
people randomly die, good people and evil people are still
Yeah.
alive, you know. So it's like, okay, I do believe there is a law of attraction. I do believe there's
Mhm.
manifestation, but I also believe that there are some things we don't have control of. And
Mhm.
how this all ties together, we haven't figured it out yet. Maybe some people have. Maybe it's just,
Yeah.
we don't all have all the answers. And it goes back to what we were talking about with the whole yoga thing, with there's a community I thought that was going to be a saint and they're not, you know.
Yeah.
It goes back to nobody has all the answers and we're all in this big soup of
Yes.
mixed with thousands of millions, billions of different people who are
With different
wired
perspective.
with different perspective. It's like one big clusterfuck. And
Yeah.
it's like you really are swimming with sharks and you're
Mhm.
swimming with diamonds. Like you don't know
Yeah.
what's in the water really. Isn't
It's
it
so
kind of
true.
weird?
It is. It is. And I can see how that's, you know, scary to some people to think about just the vastness of that. But at the same time, it's like, you know, if you know where you are and you know where your heart is, like that's it like going to the law of attraction, like you're not going to attract the evil people to you, like if you're solid in who you are in your inner world, because that peace in your inner world is going to create the peace in your outer world. And
Mhm.
if somebody's not peaceful, they're not going to come bother you.
Mm.
That's how I feel about it. But as far as like just the law of attraction and where that can take people, there's just so much. And thinking about what you were saying, when you're expressing to people your fears about your absolutely valid fears about what you are about to go through, like, with your surgery and everything, it's so discouraging. It would be, I can't even imagine, like, it's so discouraging for someone to say something to you, like they think they're being positive, to say to you, oh, well, are you attracting that to yourself, or whatever. But it made me a little bit sad, like when you said that, people were being like that.
Well, I
And
think
I
that
hope I
they
wasn't.
no,
I might,
no.
like,
Well, no, it wasn't like I was like, "Oh, how could you be like that?" I think that
no, it's
they
just an inner feeling.
people come from a really good place when they say that.
Yes.
I know
Yeah.
they do, because I know they want to cheer me up, and they want to see me, like, arrive
Mhm.
from point A to point B, like in good, in health. And it's almost like
Yes.
they're trying to get me on board with the, like, be positive, so that way I
Mhm.
do have a positive outturn, because they want to
Yeah.
they want to see me succeed. They want to see, and I'm like, yes, I have to remember that that's where they're coming from. But
Right.
I also, I'm saying this so that way any of our listeners can have maybe a different perspective, that maybe if somebody comes to you with any fears of big things that are happening in their life, that they can say, maybe I'll hold back the statement of, you know, that positivity just for a
Yeah.
bit, so that way I can surround them with love, kindness, and
Yeah.
understanding first. And then maybe, like, well, how about this? Why
Inch
don't,
it in there.
yeah, like, inch it in there. Like, hey, why don't tonight we do a mantra together? I'll do it from here, you do it from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just I've realized, like, I've realized through all of the crap that I've been through, there's balance to everything. Everything.
Yeah.
Don't do too much of
Very
one
true.
thing. Even
Right.
like the positivity, there's balance. I'm like, I know that I feel like I had more to say, but I was like, okay.
Oh. That
There's
happens to
balance.
me a lot.
Period. Period.
Period. Like, question mark. No, but I definitely see what you're saying. And I think I was gonna say, I'm trying to remember. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. So I think in what you're saying, that people should take the time to listen more. We all as humans have to process our emotions, and it's really hard to process your emotions, when someone, like, you say something and someone is from the goodness of their heart throwing positivity at you, you know and it's funny. That's how I see it. It's like you're saying this thing, that how you're feeling, and then they're like taking darts of positivity and like throwing them, like, okay, this is gonna hit her and this is gonna work, like it's a trank dart or something. But they're so well intent, like there's so many good intentions behind it. But
Mhm.
that's a really interesting thing, like. But yeah, needing to process excuse me, process your emotions is like so important. And I think many people don't take that into account. Goes back to the whole looking in the mirror thing, because when you're processing your emotions, it's not easy. Like, if you have to look at yourself and say, okay, I'm feeling this way, and many people don't take the time to do that. They feel a certain way, and then they go, it not to say you were like seeking validation from people. I do not think you were at all. You're expressing your emotions and feelings. But a really common human tendency, this because this is something I used to do, is I'd be feeling a certain way, and I know how I felt, but I would go seek validation from somebody else about it. Like, okay, yeah, this is how I'm feeling, but is this really how I'm feeling? Even though I knew it was how I was feeling, I would go to somebody else and tell them and expect them to, like, side with me, and maybe they would and maybe they wouldn't. And the weird part about it, this is like on the unhealthy aspect of things where I was for a long time. When I would go to someone and tell them my emotions and they didn't validate what I felt or like thought or whatever, I would get mad. But it's like the truth is I didn't need the validation. So this is kind of
Mm.
on the flip side of what you're saying. I needed to go within and process what I was dealing with, whereas there is sometimes where you need to vent to someone. And it's like if people can realize that like it's just like when someone needs to vent. Also, I think that the person's venting should be transparent about it too and like, hey, I just need to vent. I'm not looking for advice. I just need someone to listen. So it's like it goes both ways. And I think that's the balance, the person venting, say, hey, I just need to vent, don't need to hear any advice. And the other person to be like, oh, okay, and like keep their positivity darts like in the bag, until they need them. If that makes sense.
Oh, it makes so much sense. You just like I'm hearing it and I'm just like, yeah, that it's a really
Yeah.
neat. It's cool to hear your perspective and then my perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and it's literally like two sides of the mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
Same world, different worlds. It's parallel universes.
Yes, it's the opposite. It's the
Oh my
parallel.
God. I just had this amazing idea though. I was like, you know what I should do is uh everybody who I usually talk to and in my circle of friends and family, find out what their love languages are. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't just go with your partner, like your man or your wife or girlfriend or
Mm-hmm.
boyfriend. Um, it's your friends too. Because I'm like, I
Totally.
wonder if sometimes I'm not telling or speaking the same love language for my friends when I'm trying to tell them how great they are and how much I appreciate their
Right.
friendship. Yeah, I'm giving them words of affirmation, but what if it's maybe something else? Maybe if it's
Right.
gifts or um acts of service or things like that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, ding, a light bulb just went off. And I was like, okay, I need all my friends and all my sisters
Yeah.
to tell me what their love languages are. So that way I can be a better friend and family
Communicator.
members. Yes. To
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
That's really, yeah, it just made me realize that
Yeah.
because we're not mind readers. We can't mind read what,
It's true.
like my friends who were throwing darts at me when I was trying to tell them, I needed like, or not, no, I can't even say I was trying to tell them because I wasn't telling them. How would they know
Yeah.
what
That's just it.
I need?
Right.
Now that I'm remembering these conversations, I never
Yeah.
said, hey, actually, I need this right now. I never spoke it.
Yeah.
So how would they know? Oh my
So
gosh.
often we don't. Yeah.
Yep. There it
It's
is.
so true. Like I'm saying these things, but it's like I don't do this all the time.
Yeah.
It's so different to be aware of something and then to actually put it to use. Like there's so much in between there. Like because I'm telling you, there's things I tell people all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to do this yet, but I know how it works.
Oh my God.
you
Wow.
know, and it's just one of those things. Like I know I need to be better about communicating to people like what I need, but the love language thing, that is so true. I use the love languages with my husband and my two sons like constantly. Like I know what all of our love languages are and we work on that a lot, but it's true I hadn't thought about it that with friends too.
Mm.
Cuz there's a couple of my friends I know friends who have their love language is like gifts, you know, whereas that's like at the bottom of the list for me, so I have to consciously think about that.
Mm.
Like when I know someone's love language, like a friend or something, is gifts, and because if somebody's gonna come to my birthday party or something, let's say, I prefer people don't bring gifts. Like I just want your time. I want to hear the words. Like mine is words of affirmation. That is my biggest one, and then quality time is probably my second. So I'm like, I want you to be here with me and tell me how much you love me, and tell me I look pretty, damn it. Like that's what I want from my friends. I don't want a whole bunch of lavish gifts and like keep that shit. I don't want it. Like most of the time people get knickknacks anyway. I don't want any fucking knickknacks. Like I mean, some people are really good with thoughtful gifts, but
Mm.
it's just not what I need. So I have to consider when I have a friend who does absolutely love to get gifts and that's their like love language. Like, okay, I need to really put some thought into a gift for this person
Mm.
and not
Mhm.
think about what I would want. And it's
That's
it's
really
actually
interesting.
hard. Yeah, it's hard to like flip what you want and think about like what does somebody else want.
Mm.
It takes some effort. It really does take some effort.
Well, this is the plan. So since we are in the same girl gang,
Yeah.
me and Shreddy, we're gonna, you know what? We're gonna, after this, we're gonna start
Yeah.
we're gonna figure out everybody's love language. And if they don't
Yeah.
know it, we're gonna send them the link to figure it out.
Right?
Here's the
Like,
tools.
take this quiz.
Right, because we're onto something. And if you're listening, which you are, because you can hear this, we encourage you to do the same. Let's all do it and, you know, see if that changes anything in our relationships with our friends and family and see how that goes. So that would be really interesting to find out everybody's take on this. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. And Shreddy, do you have any last words?
I don't think I do. I think we've covered so much, and it's amazing. I'm happy that I finally have been able to take this time to do this with you, to be on your podcast. And I'm so grateful for you, Halsey. You're an amazing friend. You're an amazing person. Just all the things that you do in your life. Like, I'm so proud of you, you know, as my friend. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for everything that we are able to exchange and be for each other. So thank you. Thank you.
Shreddy, thank you so much. Ashoahie for coming on and this is so fun. We definitely have to do this again.
Yes. Yeah. Now that you've popped my cherry, let's go back to being dirty here. My first time on a podcast. You popped my cherry on the podcasting. I got to come back now.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening in. And you please subscribe, please share, and give us your reviews. You can do that on Sexy Freedom Media on Facebook or on iTunes. Go get my book, Nothing Sexier Than Freedom. It's on Audible and Amazon Books and Barnes and Nobles. So thanks again for listening and have a great day. Bye.
Want to hear more?
Visit us at SexyFreedomMedia.com.